Welcome ladies and gentlemen to the third and final video in the Vita Week Mini series, and in today's video we are going to be earning the Platinum Trophy for Gravity Rush on the PlayStation Vita. I am well aware that they have a PS4 remaster of Gravity Rush, but it was originally intended for the Vita audience, and so I thought that would probably be the best way to experience it. And to be fair, it is. The game is weird, the story is baffling at times and leaves you with more questions than answers, but it's a hell of a lot of fun and I'm glad I gave it a chance. Anyway, with the intro out of the way, let's get into this video. We begin the game as an unknown woman who finds herself waking up in a park, however with seemingly no recollection as to how she got there or who she is. We then notice a weird looking cat nearby that seems to want to lead us somewhere, and so we begin to follow it, and almost immediately after getting into the game we unlock our first trophy. We continue to follow the weird looking cat and we eventually stumble across a man who urges us to follow him and save his son. Upon following him, however, we witness a massive but obviously very weird storm begin to rip up parts of the city, including people's homes. One of them, which this gentleman's son is still inside of. He tells us that we're like that crow girl and to use our cat to go and save him. However, we have no idea what he's on about. We've literally just got here. He tells us to drop the act and that he had witnessed us fall from the sky and got up without a scratch. Our mysterious cat friend then reveals to us that he has the power to grant us the ability to essentially manipulate gravity to our advantage, and we now use this newly acquired ability to make our way from platform to platform in order to save the child. Now you'd think after saving this kid's life his father would be a bit more grateful, but no, he's pissed at us and blames us for losing his house. Like, bro, you do realise I could have let your son fly away into the abyss. Think about that. With that though, we just decide to leave them to it and start travelling the streets with our cat friend, who we now name as Dusty. And with that, this brings an end to our first episode of the game and we unlock another trophy. We then notice a weird looking crow, something very similar looking to our cat in fact, and so we decide to follow it as it must have been related to the crow girl that the man told us about earlier. We hope that finding her will give us information as to who we are, and so using our gravity abilities we follow the crow around the city. We do in fact come across Crow Girl, however she doesn't stick around to have a chat and quickly darts off. We do however notice a man in need of some help and so jump down and deal with the thugs surrounding him. We then notice a wanted poster for the girl we are after and we find out that her name is Raven and question the man as to who she is. However, before he can start explaining, we notice a group of monsters have appeared and have begun attacking civilians, and so we step in and put a stop to it. This is where we get introduced to the unique combat mechanics of Gravity Rush. While we do have a simple attack like kicking, we are also able to use gravity to come down on our enemies with some force. This is known as the gravity kick and is honestly so much fun to do, and realistically is the only combat move you'll actually need for the rest of the game. After dealing with the monsters, we then return to the man we had saved a minute ago, but he tells us he'll contact us later, and due to sudden events, the city doesn't actually take too kindly to what he refers to as shifters, and so tells us to leave. This then completes episode 2, unlocking another trophy. We then spend the next few missions of the game getting to grips with our gravity abilities and making a home for ourselves in this new city. We find ourselves a little bit of a job and was tasked with helping some of the city workers get the local fountain up and running again, and we did this by using our abilities to get a bunch of purple gems in order to refuel the fountain, because for some reason the fountain needs fuel. But this does get us another story related trophy for helping out. We also learn that these purple gems can be used to upgrade our stats and the power of our gravity powers, but don't have enough to do anything sufficient with the upgrades just yet. But I will be keeping an eye out and collecting as many as I can, not only just for upgrades, but because there are 2 trophies related to them. but we will get into that later. We then attempted one of the 20 different challenges that we can find throughout the world of Gravity Rush, and we will need to get a gold medal in all of them in order to unlock their respective trophies. Our first challenge was a combat challenge. Now I knew I wasn't going to get a gold medal because again I have no upgrades to my name, but I did get the frequent flyer trophy for landing 10 gravity kicks in a row without landing or taking damage. And we also unlocked the new challenger trophy for just clearing our first challenge. We were then on the search for somewhere to stay and decided that the perfect place was the sewers, and then spent the next few minutes going around the city getting ourselves a table, a chair and a bed, because apparently that's all you need to make a house a home. We do learn though that thanks to having our house in the sewers, we can use many of the manholes we find around the city to fast travel around, and of course finding all of them nabs us a trophy, but like the challenges, that will come later. For now though, we get another trophy for making a home and completing episode 3. A little while later we run into Sid again, and he tells us that since what happened with the monsters he managed to get a promotion, and that him and his team have managed to get a tip on a criminal known as Alias, and that he plans on stealing the gem in the middle of the city. This just so happens to be the one thing that protects the city. I mean, why you'd have something like that out in the open, I don't really know. You're asking for it to be robbed at that point, but there you go. Thankfully Sid has a plan though, and has us replace the real gem with a fake candy gem that he had left nearby for us. Once we have the real gem in hand, we return to Sid and give it to him. However, it turns out that it was actually the criminal Alias in disguise, and had managed to get us to retrieve the gem for him, and then decides to make off with it. Alias makes his escape, and Sid then wakes up behind us. We tell him of what's happened, but now was not the time to kick ourselves, as there was another monster attack that we now know are called the Nevi. After dealing with them, we are then introduced to Sid's boss, and it's safe to say he wasn't happy with the situation and tries to accuse us of working with Alias. Although thankfully Sid, as well as many of the townspeople, stuck up for us and we were allowed to go free, completing episode 4 and unlocking another trophy. A little while later we find ourselves meeting with a woman who claims to be able to tell us our destiny, or at least points us in the right direction, and hands us a note with some vague hints. This whole thing sounded a bit dodgy if you ask me, but we decided to follow up on these hints anyway, and can't lie, it was a bit of a weird wild goose chase which ends up in us helping a kid find his father. This however leads to a mysterious doorway opening up in a tunnel which we proceed to investigate. This doorway ends up leading us to this whole other world hidden away from everyone, and where we find it filled with Nevi. However, we have no choice but to run as Dusty decides to make a dart for it. Avoiding the Nevi, we eventually come across a Mario pipe, and upon jumping inside are taken to the home of a man who claims himself to be the creator of this world. Although we weren't buying it, and seeing as we weren't willing to listen, he decides to return us to our world, and we get a trophy for completing episode 5. A little while later we stumble across this gentleman again, and he continues to stick with the story that he is the creator of the world. He tells us that the universe has ripped away people's homes and people's families, and that they were all waiting for the day it gives them back. However, whether that actually happens or not, all depends on the choices that we make. He tells us that a door to a new world is about to open up, and inside this new world is where we will discover the truth regarding our power, and then proceeds to open his coat and flashes a little bit more than we were expecting. All of a sudden a portal opens up and we are sucked into a mysterious new world. This weird new otherworldly dimension contains some of the many souls that have been ripped away from the city, and we must now defeat the Nevi located here and follow the purple flowers in order to free them and to reveal one of our new hidden powers. This new power is the spiraling claw attack, and while it is great for our first special move, it pales in comparison to some of the other moves we can get later on. After gaining our new power though and following the flowers, we come across our final Nevi in this world, and it was time for a boss fight. Much like all the other Nevi, he is taken down the same way. You just have to continuously hit his weak points. Granted though, this one is much tougher and can take a lot more damage. However, we will be seeing this Nevi pop up a lot more in the future. Regardless of how tough he is, we are tougher and managed to take down the Nevi, freeing the lost part of the city trapped in this world and saving the souls of everyone trapped inside, returning them to our world. Upon returning to our world, we speak with the creator again. However, we are quickly interrupted by Raven, who for some reason wasn't exactly pleased that we were getting involved and seems to blame us for what's happening. We are well aware though that she would probably kick our ass in a fight, and so decide to make a quick getaway. This brings us to the end of episode 6 though, and we unlock another trophy. We then spend the next episode helping a boy by the name of Newt find his girlfriend Echo, who has gone missing. Turns out she thought everyone around her hated her, and this led her to taking a small Nevi and hiding it in her bag in the belief that it wasn't going to leave or hurt her. Well, the exact opposite happened, and the Nevi ended up taking control of her body, turning her into a monster. We of course managed to save her before the Nevi fully infests her body, and we unlock another trophy for completing episode 7. After saving Echo, we once again come across the creator, who we come to know as Gabe. He tells us it's time to enter another world to save another part of the city, and this time we are thrown into a world filled with lava. Much like the previous world we entered though, all we have to do is kill Nevi, follow the purple plants to find our new power, and save the city. This of course leads to a new power, which is one of the most overpowered moves in the game, as well as another boss fight, but this wasn't against the Nevi, this was against Raven, another gravity shifter like ourselves. I can't lie, I expected this fight to be a lot more difficult than it was. Don't get me wrong, she's got some moves and can get a good amount of damage in, but the fight itself was no harder than one of the Nevi bosses we fought earlier. We do of course manage to take her down, saving another part of the city and its people, and unlocking another trophy for completing episode 8. A little while later we find ourselves once again working with Sid in the pursuit of stopping Alias. Turns out this time he was planning to nab the gem from the Industria area of the city, and so once again using Sid's candy making skills, we attempt to use another fake gem to lure him out. While patrolling the area though, Sid informs us of a bomb that has been spotted nearby and requests that we go and get rid of it, as well as deal with the incoming Nevi. After dealing with the Nevi and getting rid of the bomb, we are then informed that Alias is attacking the elite soldiers guarding the actual gem, and so we rush over to help. We find and confront Alias, however he decides to make a run for it, and so we decide to chase after him. However, we don't actually get to catch him, as all of a sudden he turns into a huge Nevi monster and begins attacking us and the city. You know what this means, it was boss fight time again. This time Alias was going down once and for all. Now although he was very big, this actually helped us. It made hitting his weak points a hell of a lot easier, and with the amount of health he has and damage that he can do, it definitely helped to be the smaller one in this situation. We of course take down Alias, defeating him once and for all and stopping the attack on the city. This leads to Sid getting yet another promotion, and he also tells us that the city is very happy with the help we have given recently, and there's even talk of a reward for our efforts, and he ends up getting a little reward himself. This brings an end to episode 9, unlocking us another trophy. We then find ourselves once again talking to Gabe the creator, and again are sent to another world to fight the Nevi, get a new power and save another lost section of the city. This time was a little bit more difficult compared to the previous two worlds, as while talking to Gabe, our cat decided he was going to have a little snacky snack, which coincidentally causes him to get ill, and so have to progress through and fight the majority of this world with a limited amount of power, but it wasn't too bad to get through. Of course, beating the Nevi and saving the lost part of the city brings an end to episode 10 and unlocks us another trophy. Once back in our world, we realise that the Nevi we had just defeated has somehow managed to come back to life and was now beginning to attack the city, and it was up to us to try and once again stop it. Luckily for us, Dusty was also feeling fine now, so we had gained back full control of our powers. As we proceed to fight through the constant flow of Nevi, we end up getting some assistance from Mega Man's sister and the Hexville Special Defense Force. And while they work on clearing out the surrounding Nevi, I could turn my focus into bringing down the boss that had taken residence on the lighthouse. After finally exposing its core, we are then able to finish the Nevi boss off, killing it and saving the city once again. We then meet up with the Special Defense Force and they offer us the opportunity to work with them, however we politely decline, seeing as we've been doing alright on our own. And with that, episode 11 ends, unlocking us another trophy. A little while later we find ourselves helping a woman find a letter that she had dropped down below the city. Unlikely that we would even find it, we still agree to help and proceed to head deep beneath the city and end up stumbling across an entrance straight into the tower itself. Inside the tower almost looks as if it's one giant spine comprised of huge pieces of bone. A bit creepy if you ask me, and doesn't really fit where the city is, but there you go. It also seems to be one massive shaft that leads further down into the tower, and this goes on for quite some distance. I swear there's like 10 minutes of purely just falling before anything actually happens. As we continue deeper into the tower, we are once again confronted by Raven, who demands that we turn back and accuses us of essentially wanting to destroy Hexville and kill the children. Bearing in mind we had saved the city numerous times at this point, something that she would have known had she not been such an arse, and what children? We have no idea what she's on about. Now though, we must make our way to the bottom while trying to keep her off of our back, which is harder than I thought it'd be. I thought hitting her would slow her down and help me stay ahead, but all it did was leave me open for attack, and so I decided I would just fall as fast as I can while dodging her powers. A tactic that worked surprisingly well. Eventually we find ourselves back on the outside of the tower and notice that the darkness down below seemed to be rising, and all of a sudden we are knocked down into the void below, bringing an end to episode 12 and unlocking another trophy. We awaken and find ourselves trapped in a cage by a bunch of kids, no less. Dusty was nowhere to be seen and there was no sign of getting released anytime soon. One of the kids are left to watch over us while the rest go and, I don't know, play I guess, or whatever it is that kids do down here. But luckily for us, this kid was due her nap time and take the opportunity to escape our cage while she is soundo. It doesn't take long before we are reunited with Dusty, and just in time too, as a massive Nevi monster and his friends begin attacking the children and their village. We of course can't allow this to happen, and after a pretty tough fight we are able to bring the monster down. After doing so, the group of kids and their leader tell us that they have been trapped down here for quite some time, ever since their bus fell off the edge of the tower, and thanks us for the assistance. However, it was getting late and the kids wanted to get some rest, and so did we, to be fair. This brings an end to episode 13 and we unlock another trophy. At this point I decided to do a little bit of exploration, and seeing as I had upgraded myself quite a bit at this point, I decided to take on the two different challenges that we can find in this area, one being a race challenge and one being a combat challenge, and either they were really easy or I was really overpowered, because we managed to power through these two challenges like they were nothing, and even managed to get gold medals for both of them, which also nabs us the gold medalist trophy for getting our first one. A little while later we meet back up with the leader of the tribe, and he reveals himself to be Zaza. He tells us that he's aware of the darkness that has been rising from below and knows that him and the rest of the tribe won't be around much longer, and tells us of his regrets, including not being able to save his adopted sister Sashia. We tell him to not give up hope and that we will find a way to save him and the rest of the kids. However, that will have to come later as we find the village once again under attack from a powerful Nevi. Thankfully we have some help with this fight as Raven makes an appearance and assists us in taking the Nevi down, also known as a Nushi. Now, our normal gravity attacks weren't strong enough to even phase the Nushi, so instead we needed to lure the Nushi towards Raven so she can then release a giant acorn type thing from the branches above to take it out. After dealing with the Nushi, we return to the children where Zaza is talking to Raven, asking that his sister Sashia doesn't leave, possibly indicating that Raven is in fact Sashia. However, it's not confirmed at this point in time and it's highly unlikely due to her age. We suggest to Raven that it would be a good idea to work together to find a way to save the kids, however she wasn't a fan of that idea and instead intends on using something known as the Ark to save them herself. So we head off to find our own way to help save the kids, bringing an end to episode 14 and unlocking another trophy. We then find ourselves looking for the girl who had fallen asleep while on guard duty called Cyanea. We end up finding her asleep on a plant quite some distance away with realistically no way she could have got there. She then grabs our hand and tells us that although there are some things we can see with our eyes, there are also some things that we can only see with our mind. She tells us that we will be able to save the children but must first awaken the power inside us before staring us straight in the eyes and transporting us to another world. This world was very different from ours and very cube-like. We had to navigate what she called the River of Forgetfulness without the use of our cat Dusty. Can't lie, for what has already been an extremely weird game with an extremely weird story, this just made it even weirder. So I'm not entirely sure, actually, let's be honest, I have absolutely no clue as to what I'm even supposed to be discovering. Going through this world, we end up stumbling across a castle and inside we find a woman standing by her throne. However, just as she is about to reveal herself, we are pulled from the world and returned to our own. We are once again face to face with Cyanea, or rather the dream guardian that keeps Cyanea anchored between the realms of dreams and reality. He tells us that we have discovered the ability to see with our mind's eye and we will be able to use that power in order to use the Ark to save the children, which is great. Oh, and he also reveals to us that this whole world we are in is actually just a dream and we are all just crystallized figments of Cyanea's imagination, which is not so great. Can't lie, I've already spent the majority of this game completely lost when it came to understanding the story, but now I'm just completely baffled. This does, however, bring an end to episode 15, and we unlock another trophy. We then return Cyanea to the rest of the tribe, and where we discover Raven has returned with the Ark in tow. This now meant we can get all of the kids onto the Ark and return them to their families in the city above. Well, that was the plan, but of course nothing in this game is as straightforward as that, and the Nushi ends up making a return to ensure that none of us leaves. This time we didn't have Raven to help us, as she needed to get the children to safety, leaving it up to me and Dusty to deal with it. And deal with it we did. Thanks to his previous attack attempt earlier, we were able to weaken him enough to expose his core weak spots, allowing us to easily take him down. After doing so, we then meet back up with Raven and the Ark and proceed to make our escape. She reveals to us that she is in fact Zaza's sister Sasha, and she reveals to us that she had spent so much time hating us as a man named Danelika, who she has been working with, had promised to help search for the kids as long as the lost parts of the city stay lost, and when she saw us returning them, she thought I was trying to come between her getting the children back. Before getting to finish the conversation though, that damn Nushi once again makes an appearance to completely ruin our day and ends up knocking us off of the Ark, leaving us to fall into the void below, bringing an end to episode 16 and unlocking another trophy. We end up waking back up at the bottom of the tower, but seemingly back in our own world, and so begin to make our way all the way back up, and if this was any indication of how long it took to get down, we were in for quite a lengthy journey. While making our way up the tower, we do stumble across a man who tells us he came down in search for the letter he gave to his girlfriend. Turns out that this is the same letter we originally came down here to look for, and we agreed to help him look for it. We do end up finding the letter, and the man then reveals himself to be a ghost and asks us to deliver the letter to his girlfriend, to which we agree. A little while later we find ourselves back in the city of Hexville. However, Raven and the Ark had not yet made it back, and a lot had changed since we've been away. Turns out what felt like a few days to us was actually a whole year for Hexville, and while we've been gone, Danelika, the man Raven was working with and who wanted parts of the city to stay lost, had managed to become mayor and officially enlisted the help of the Special Defense Force and given them total control over the city's military. Good thing too, as Nushi wasn't willing to let things slide and decided he was going to make his final appearance. Now at this point I was pretty sick and tired of fighting him, and thankfully we didn't have to. Instead, Mega Man's sister came to the rescue and took him down for good. We then meet with the SDF, where the commander tells us of their latest breakthrough in keeping the city safe with an autonomous machine known as the Jellyfish, and that Mega Man's sister was actually another secret weapon they called Sea Wasp. They once again offer us to work with them, taking down the Nevi. However, it's been a year since we had a shower, so we tell them we'll think about it after we get cleaned up. At this point we then return home, bringing an end to episode 17 and unlocking another trophy. After trying to get back to normality after being nearly a year away, we end up coming across a scientist by the name of Adro in need of a gravity queen. He needs help retrieving the briefcase that he had dropped beneath the city, and immediately I'm thinking no way, because the last time we went below the city we ended up disappearing for a whole year. Luckily it wasn't too far down this time and we was able to get it for him, after which he proceeded to take the piss even further and pretty much gets us to do his job for him. He then gets us to set up some sensors, which then cause the Nevi to appear and leaves us no choice but having to defend them, only for him to then blow all of them up once he had what he needed. Like, seriously, what the hell was the point? And then to absolutely twist our nips even more, he gets us to taxi him around to his appointment. I mean, some people really do have the nerve. Well, it turns out that this scientist just so happens to be working with a new mayor, and the actual intention behind the sensors was so that they could gather power readings from our cat with the plans of stealing him later. This does, however, bring an end to episode 18, and we unlock another trophy. We end up heading home to get some shut-eye when we are awoken by Dusty all of a sudden duplicating himself numerous times, and we all of a sudden see Alias, where he tells us that we got greedy and there are consequences for overfeeding our cat. Please, somebody, make it make sense, please. We then wake back up in the small park where we first started the game, and we must now navigate the empty city, gathering up the numerous Dusties scattered around in order to make him whole again and regain our power. Once we get our power back and deal with the rather large amount of Nevi, Alias all of a sudden reveals his identity to us, although we as the player never see it. We then once again awaken, and thankfully that was all a dream. We check and find Dusty is perfectly normal, and to our surprise we also find Cyania hiding in our bed. Confused as to how she actually got there, this does however mean that Raven and the kids on the Ark were still out there somewhere. This does bring us to the end of episode 19 though, and we unlock another trophy. Upon heading outside, we discover that the mayor and the military are issuing a public announcement and asks everyone to gather at Freedom Square. When we get there, we find Gabe the creator, and he tells us that the end is nigh and that he senses a disturbance in the fabric of reality. We then hear the mayor and the city's military announce the immediate deployment of a weapon they called the Anemone in order to wipe out the Nevi once and for all. Conveniently, it had a chance to prove what it was capable of right away, as almost immediately after its deployment, an army of Nevi began attacking the city, and we provided the assistance in wiping out the Nevi while the police focused on getting civilians to safety. During this fight though, we are confronted by Unica, and she tells us that she has a warrant out for our arrest and to come quietly. Bearing in mind the city is literally being destroyed around us, and arresting us is top of her priority. We of course aren't about to let her take us into custody while the Nevi are still on the loose, leaving us no choice but to take her down, but thankfully she goes down relatively easily. However, while attempting to stop her, we all of a sudden are captured by one of the military's drones, but Sid manages to notice this and shoots the drone down. This was still no use though, and we were still trapped in our crystallized prison. It couldn't have happened at a worse time either, as the Anemone becomes uncontrollable and starts attacking the city. We also learn that the Anemone is actually a Nevi that had been fused with military hardware and weaponized, because that's a great idea. Thankfully, Cyania and her Dream Guardian come to the rescue, and she frees Dusty and Dusty frees us, bringing us back into the fight. This brings an end to episode 20 and unlocks us another trophy. Which brings us to our final chapter of the game. We now had to take down the Anemone before it destroys the city, but after quite a lengthy fight we realise how little we were actually affecting it, and Gabe suggests ripping a hole through space-time in order to bring it down, with Cyania and her Guardian agreeing and telling us that it's their final act of interference with the dream. Doing this somehow managed to transport Raven and the Ark full of children back to our dimension, and she uses the Ark to deal some mega damage to the Anemone. With the Ark back and now both Raven and Unica back in the fight, we work together to bring down the Anemone before the city is completely destroyed. We also learn that the mayor has initiated Anemone's self-destruct sequence, meaning anyone nearby will be caught in the blast, and so now we are on a time limit in order to bring it down and get it far enough away from the city without any casualties. Eventually, the three of us manage to wear its shield down enough that it exposes its core, and while Raven and Unica pin the Anemone against the wall, we use Dusty to turn ourselves into some gravity-shifting, space-looking Black Panther and use our new strength to launch the Anemone high above the city. Thankfully that was enough, and upon its self-destruction it also manages to catch the mayor and his assistant in the blast. Have some of that for wasting my time, you bastard. This of course means that we have managed to wipe out the Nevi and save Hicksville from total destruction. Raven was back, the Ark with all the children were back, and the city could finally work to get back to some sort of normality. During the credits we find ourselves talking with Raven when Cyania makes another appearance. We ask her where the children are, and she tells us that the Ark will protect them until it's time for them to awake, although doesn't actually give us any indication as to when that may be. We also learn that the mayor survived the explosion and has still got a piece of the Nevi. He seems to come to the conclusion that the shifter is someone he recognises, however much like Alias, the identity of this individual remains unknown to us. For now though, the city's safe and everyone's happy, bringing an end to episode 21 and unlocking our final story related trophy. And with that being the end of the story, we can now focus on cleaning up all of the remaining trophies we have left. I decided to turn my focus into completing all 20 of the different challenges while achieving a gold medal in each of them, as well as picking up as many precious gems as I can. We get a trophy for collecting a total of both 20 and 40,000 gems, so there was going to be a decent amount of grinding. Thankfully, a massive chunk of those gems come from just completing all of the challenges, so I was able to make some progress pretty damn quickly. Of course, the challenges are pretty self-explanatory. As I said earlier, it's usually combat or race related in some way and usually requires us to beat a certain time or defeat a certain amount of enemies. It took a little while, and for some of them I found it much easier to complete them using the actual PS Vita itself. Again, I'm playing on the PS Vita TV, it shouldn't technically be played on there. The rest of the challenges were easy to complete without, but the gravity slide races were just impossible. They required motion sense, and no matter what I did, I couldn't get it working on my controller, so the PS Vita itself had to do the job, and it did. Of course, after a couple of hours we managed to get a gold medal in all 20 challenges, which nabs us a total of 3 trophies. True Challenger for clearing every challenge and getting any medal, Silver Lining for earning silver on every challenge, and All That Glitters for earning gold on every challenge. While going after all of the challenges, I also managed to unlock a few miscellaneous trophies, with the first being Top Cat for raising Cat's reputation to Top Cat, although I never actually caught the trophy popping as I was on my Vita. We then unlocked the Gem Collector trophy for us collecting a total of 20,000 gems, leaving us only 20,000 more to collect. We then unlocked the Going Underground trophy for discovering every manhole. And we unlocked the combat related trophy throwing machine for throwing 10 objects in a row at Nevi without missing or taking damage. With the challenges, manholes and some of the gems now out of the way, I turn my focus into now finding the mysterious couple and hearing out the complete story. This mysterious couple can be found throughout various locations both in the city and the Nevi rifts that take us to other worlds. Essentially what happened is they discovered the ability to travel through space and time and presumably other dimensions. However, something ended up going wrong with their machine and they are now both stuck forever teleporting to and from different dimensions while trying to come up with a solution to fix their problem. Managing to find all 16 encounters though unlocks us the Lost in Time and Space trophy. Now, as that previous trophy takes us back through all of the locations in the game, this included revisiting each of the Nevi rifts, and within each one we can find a one-off special rare Nevi. These Nevi can only be attacked with melee attacks like the gravity kick and are significantly stronger than their normal counterparts, although still very easy to take down, with each one offering a trophy. The first was the Nevi that we could find in the Ruins Rift, which nabs us the Ancient Game Hunter trophy, as well as the Gem Aficionado trophy for collecting a total of 40,000 gems, leaving a potentially massive grind now out of the way. The second was the Inferno Rift for the Burning Game Hunter trophy. And the third was the Illusory Game Hunter for defeating the rare Nevi in the Mirage Rift. Leaving us with one more trophy, and that was for using a special attack to defeat 8 enemies in one go. For this, it was as simple as revisiting one of the first combat challenges we come across in the game and waiting until I had enough enemies to pull it off. Of course, doing so unlocks the Gravitational Anomaly trophy, as well as the It's All Relative Platinum trophy. And with that being the Platinum Trophy, this brings us to the end of the video and our final video of the Vita Week Mini series. It's unfortunate that I've only been able to do 3 out of the 5 games that I originally had planned for this week, but I'm still happy with the outcome regardless. I've got to say Gravity Rush was incredibly fun. I wanted to play the remastered version on PS4 for the longest time, but seeing as it was originally on the Vita, I thought that would probably be the best place to experience it, and I can confidently say it was. I had a hell of a lot of fun with the game's combat and gravity mechanics, and although the story didn't really make a lot of sense to me at the time, since going back through editing the video as well as doing a little bit more research, I have a rough idea of what the story is about, but still relatively quite baffled. It was very weird, but I enjoyed it and I can't wait to play through Gravity Rush 2 in the future. Hopefully this Vita Week mini-series has encouraged at least one of you to dust off your old Vita, or maybe even pick one up to give the fantastic library of games a go, as well as earn some of those trophies. After all, if we want another Sony handheld, we have to give them a reason to believe it will truly work. Anyway guys, this does bring us to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it and would like to see more content like this on the channel in the future, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on. It shows your support, and your support is always greatly appreciated on the channel. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on to stay up to date with everything I upload. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next video.